So last night, I finally had a night off, and I decided to rewatch The Batman. Matt Reeves' 2022 blockbuster that is now apparently the first installment in what they're officially calling the Batman Epic Crime Saga. Anyway, I opened up the Steelbook and popped in the beautiful 4K disc. Now, I've got some issues with this movie. I'm a bit tired of super grounded takes on Batman where they're still embarrassed to even let Catwoman wear a mask that has proper cat ears on it. The Bruce-Alfred relationship is underdeveloped, so the fake out where you think Alfred died falls kind of flat. Some of the storytelling revelations with Bruce's parents get messy, and obviously the Joker scene sucks. But the things it does well, it does incredibly well. Pattinson absolutely rules. The movie looks astonishing and has probably the best Gotham City ever put on film. And I love seeing Batman investigating clues and crime scenes and being a detective for a change. And on this viewing, I realized that the moment when I was the most into the movie wasn't the car chase, or when Batman jumps off that building, or when Colin Farrell shouts,
"Holy God, what are you showing me? His head. Come on!"
Nope. It's when Bruce Wayne sits in his living room and starts doing research in a huge stack of old documents. Because as much as I love Batman, what I love just as much is the trope of characters in movies doing an investigation and having to read through a ton of old documents to find evidence. I love it when Jake Gyllenhaal does it in Zodiac, or when Julia Roberts does it in Erin Brockovich, or when Mark Ruffalo does it in Spotlight, or when Julia Roberts does it in The Pelican Brief, or when Mark Ruffalo does it in Dark Waters. In real life, watching someone do research is like literally the most boring thing in the world. But somehow in movies, it's exciting. The more documents a movie has, the more into it I am. Like in Dark Waters, when Ruffalo is surrounded by boxes and boxes of documents stacked to the ceiling, holy shit, that rocks. And I know I'm not alone in cheering anytime a protagonist in a horror movie goes to the library to do research. So it's time to investigate these movies about investigating and get to the bottom of the question, why do we love movies about documents? Why is cinematic research so compelling? How do you make something boring so exciting?
All right, look, it sounds like if I don't approve this, you're just gonna do the entire video at me, so you can run the story. But Patrick, you gotta be careful. We don't wanna draw the attention of anyone big or powerful.
Perfect. Dave, I'm gonna prove that audiences will show up for videos that aren't just current or topical. I'm gonna expose the YouTube algorithm for keeping these buried all these years, just like the train videos.
Wait, no, that's the exact thing I just said not to do.
God, that man truly runs on spite.
And I run on marshmallows.
All right, Emma, I hope you were over-caffeinated on 5 cups of coffee like I am because we have a lot of work to do. Did you bring the box of documents?
I did. You sounded a little frantic on the phone and I wasn't exactly sure what you meant by documents, so I just printed out a bunch of IMDb pages and this picture of Mark Ruffalo.
Perfect. If I have learned one thing from these movies, it's that the more paper you have, the better. I really think we're onto something here. Ooh, can you switch on the moody investigative lighting?
Okay, I'll keep digging, but Patrick, remember, you have some housekeeping you have to do at the beginning of the episode.
Right. I got it. Okay. Hello, I'm Patrick Willems, and welcome back to another episode of the show. Our first order of business today, the Patrick H. Willems Spring-Summer 2025 merch collection, which has been in the works for a year and a half, is finally up in our store. So now you can buy Kilms t-shirts and Vibes Movies t-shirts and 2 different mugs, including one that commemorates the indie cult favorite Train episodes.
Told you he's still sour about it.
Patrick, you forgot the best item.
Right, these. And also we have a plush Nobbles. I guess due to inexplicable popular demand, we made so many of these, and so I beg you, please buy them and get them out of here because I don't want to look at them anymore. Which brings us to our second order of business and the real reason we are here today, Documents movies.
Documents. 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 Documents.
Documents. Documents. Documents. Documents. Documents. Documents. Documents. Documents.
I feel like I should be wearing a corduroy blazer, you know, like Woodward and Bernstein always do, but instead, I'm wearing the next best thing, clothing sent to me by our friends at Rowing Blazers. Huge thank you to those guys for keeping me well dressed. So today, we are doing that thing again, like we did a couple years ago with Vibes Movies. We are creating a new category of film. So beyond just movies with papers, what exactly is a documents movie? Well, a documents movie is a blend of journalism, movie, and detective story. It's a very grounded thriller following characters looking at lots of really small details over months or sometimes years, working on one big case. Documents movies are a surprisingly recent invention, and by that, I mean, like Joaquin Phoenix, they're 50 years old. In 1976, All the President's Men, the movie about Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein's investigation of the Watergate conspiracy, essentially created this new form and set the template for everything to come. Considering that journalists have been the subjects of movies since the very beginning of cinema, this was unique. It was the third in what became known as director Alan Pakula's Paranoia trilogy, 3 films he directed in the 1970s involving conspiracies and surveillance. The first was Clute, starring Donald Sutherland and Jane Fonda, a detective movie with sex and murder, exciting stuff like that. And then there was The Parallax View with Warren Beatty, a thriller full of brainwashing, chase scenes, and assassinations. And All the President's Men, compared to those, seems kind of dry. There's no murder, no sex, no one even fires a gun. It has huge movie stars Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, but 0 romantic subplots. They don't kiss anyone, not even each other, despite all of us wishing they would. It is simply a realistic portrayal of journalists doing their jobs for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it's riveting. It was the perfect vehicle for this less sensational kind of movie, since it was about the biggest news story of the decade and based on a best-selling book. It's that magical pre-awareness that we always talk about. The movie turned out to be a major blockbuster. It won multiple Oscars, including Best Screenplay, but more importantly for this conversation, it codified the core elements of the Documents movie that would continue to this day. Okay, here. So I took a lot of notes, and here are the 7 core elements of a Documents movie. Number 1, a true story. Usually, a Documents movie is about a case or story that has already gained major national or international attention. This gives the film an immediate sense of importance because we know it's real. And if this was made up, the story would be cleaner, tighter, and flashier, but here, the dry reality is part of the point. Element number 2, underdog protagonists. The journalists or lawyers these movies are about are always just a small group, and sometimes just one person working alone. They're usually middle class, or in the case of Erin Brockovich, broke and facing eviction. So there's this unspoken class element to these movies, considering who they're up against, because element number 3 is a huge, powerful, faceless enemy. There's almost never a clear, singular villain that the heroes can face off against. It's always a system, or an institution, or some vague idea. So we're talking about people taking on the US government, or the Catholic Church, or a faceless unknown serial killer, or a massive chemical company. Or, in the case of an investigative video essayist like myself, the dreaded YouTube algorithm, controlling which videos get play, suppressing anything they deem unfit for consumption, or simply against the arbitrary standards of their own code. So the point being, the huge, powerful, faceless enemy is usually something with infinite resources and power and money. These are all David versus Goliath stories. The films often represent these enemies looming ominously in the background of shots, like in Spotlight with churches everywhere, or all the shots of huge government buildings like the White House in All the President's Men or The Post. Okay, so element number 4 is a huge cast of guys. In the investigation, the protagonists always meet a ton of regular people, sources and witnesses and victims of various kinds of abuse. This gives the movies these great ensemble casts full of character actors doing great work. These are stories full of regular people impacted by the aforementioned faceless, powerful enemy. So you've got the obviously iconic ones like Bill Camp in Dark Waters, Charles Fleischer in Zodiac, Michael Cyril Creighton in Spotlight, but also this guy, and that guy, and her, and this woman, and him, and most importantly, Scott, the guy at the Water Bureau office in Erin Brockovich. Like, if I was making the rules, at the 2016 Oscars, they would have expanded the Best Supporting Actor category to like 15 nominees just to accommodate the sheer number of amazing performances in Spotlight from guys who just show up for like a scene or two. Okay, so element number 5 is little to no time spent on the protagonists' personal lives. This seemingly goes against everything we're taught movies need. Like, you're really gonna cast 70s era Robert Redford as the world's most handsome journalist, and he's not gonna kiss anyone? Not even all those documents he keeps looking at? But the work the characters are doing is so compelling that we don't really miss the romantic subplots. Dark Waters is a great movie, but the one thing that's weird about it is the way it wastes Anne Hathaway in the thankless role of Ruffalo's wife, who just sits at home frustrated that he's working late. And speaking of Ruffalo, in Spotlight, you almost don't even notice that the character is quietly going through a divorce because it's mentioned for all of 2 lines in the entire film.
Are you married?
Yeah.
Your wife doesn't mind you working all the time?
Oh, yeah, she does.
Of course, Erin Brockovich is the exception that proves the rule. That movie starts being entirely about her personal life until it morphs into a documents movie. Number 6, libraries and archives rooms. This is the definitive visual of these movies. Protagonists surrounded by huge stacks of boxes of documents, or sitting among shelves of books and documents. The idea here is that the evidence is almost always public information. In their hubris, these powerful institutions just let it out there, knowing, correctly most of the time, that slipping some incriminating evidence into an ocean of unexciting data and fine print is effectively the same as hiding it from sight, not thinking that someone like Erin Brockovich would be so committed to spending months or even years reading through thousands of documents to find the information. This is dry, repetitive work, cross-referencing info, checking financial records, reading police reports, reading water toxicology reports. There's just so much fucking paper in these movies. Just think about how much, like, thumb-licking, page-turning, straight-up rifling you'd need to do. I mean, look at this guy, hard at work. They should call him Mark Rifalo, because he'd be rifling through those papers. Which leads us to the final core element of the documents movie, montages. Since, as we just established, so much of this is about people doing repetitive work over long periods of time, cinema becomes the perfect vehicle to tell these stories. Montages can compress time and make the repetition into a propulsive rhythm. Weeks and months can happen in seconds. The viewer gets the satisfaction of waiting only minutes for a breakthrough in the case that actually took weeks of research to find. Like, Spotlight has a montage of people making an Excel spreadsheet, and it's awesome. That right there is the power of the movies, baby. What is it, damn it? What are you trying to tell me?
You're pushing yourself too hard, pal.
Not your pal.
You're run ragged like Jake Gyllenhaal from Zodiac, or Ben Affleck in real life.
Patrick, you're gonna want to take this call.
Who is this? Some bigwig from City Hall? A YouTube whistleblower ready to reveal the algorithm's darkest secrets are... What? No, I do not want a merino wool sweater sponsorship. Stop calling me. God, these people.
I thought you loved sweaters.
I feel like we're still missing a piece of the puzzle. I don't know, maybe we need more documents.
You got it!
Wait, that's it. Emma, we need the book, David Fincher Mind Games by Adam Naiman.
On it. But the library closes in 5 minutes.
Then you better hurry.
Taxi!
Look, I get it. On paper, these movies seem boring as hell. There's no personal drama, no action, no romance. They're just 2+ hours of exposition and paperwork. People sitting in ugly offices and libraries, usually under dim or harsh lighting, looking at documents. And they usually don't even defeat the bad guy in the end. Like, last I checked, the Catholic Church and DuPont Chemical are still going strong. These are movies about research. Now look, compared to these journalists, the work that I do is deeply stupid and unimportant. They uncover systemic abuse and corruption, while I talk about why the Owls of Ga'Hoole is the Rosetta Stone in Zack Snyder's filmography. But all the same, the general process that they have and that I have is vaguely similar. Like, I do investigate these topics for several weeks at a time, and let me tell you, IRL, this process is not exciting to watch. This is what it actually looks like.
Confirm that. In fact, they deny even knowing McCord. Yeah, but I just think it's obvious that with all that money and equipment, they weren't out to work by themselves. Somebody hired them.
I'm not interested in what you think is obvious. I'm interested in what you know. What we don't know is why they went to called Democratic headquarters. Whether they work for themselves or other individuals. Or...
Other than a handful of freaks out there, nobody wants to watch a movie that is 2 hours of that. So how do these movies make all of that dull, repetitive work exciting? Well, a lot of the dull, repetitive work that I did for this video was watching a ton of these movies. And during the process, I realized that there is one line in All the President's Men that unlocks their appeal.
All we've got are pieces. We can't seem to figure out what the puzzle is supposed to look like.
See, these are movies about puzzles. They usually begin with a small, vague question, the very first piece of the puzzle. Like, hey, what about those complaints that a priest in Boston abused some kids? Or hey, what's up with those fancy lawyers representing those robbers? Or why are there medical records in the file for this real estate case? Or why does this grumpy farmer keep complaining about his animals dying? And then, as the characters begin their research, they start finding more and more pieces. We watch the protagonists gradually assemble those pieces, finding the places where they fit together until, over time, the image begins to take shape. Each new interview, each box of documents that the court finally unseals, each one gives us this dopamine hit because we know it's another key piece of the puzzle. It's another step closer to getting the full picture. Alan Pakula, director of All the President's Men, once said to the Washington Post that the movie was about, quote, that American belief that a person or small group can, with perseverance and hard work and obsessiveness, take on a far more powerful, impersonal body and win if they have the truth on their side. These are all movies about how the only way to take on a massive, powerful enemy and win is with the little details, pieces of information that you have to read through tens of thousands of documents to find, talking to the people in the margins, the ones overlooked or discarded, the details that these systems take for granted. To again return to All the President's Men, because seriously, this movie did invent this whole thing, there's a famous sequence that perfectly captures this idea. Woodward and Bernstein go to the Library of Congress to look for records of all the files requested by the White House in the past year. The library employee, a well-dressed white man at an ornate desk next to a gold-framed painting on the wall, turns them down. So then they go to another employee, a black man working in what looks like the basement, who grants their request, telling them,
I'm not sure you want them, but I got them.
And the film then cuts to maybe its most famous shot, the long overhead shot of the reading room, craning upward, showing the two reporters reading through endless documents. This is the film in a single image. Two people on their own, dwarfed by their surroundings, the structures of the government they're taking on looming over them, spending endless hours looking at the records that nobody else wants to look at, slowly building a case out of the overlooked minutia. And what makes these so watchable is the steady momentum all of these films have, as the protagonists keep chugging along, moving forward, and making progress. The editing is such a major component of what makes these movies work, creating a sense of rhythm that makes them oddly comforting considering the often dark subject matter. There's a lot of repetition throughout these films. Ringing phones, flipping pages, footsteps, knocking on doors that build this propulsive, rhythmic sonic landscape. And that's reflected in the montages that so many of these movies have of newspapers being printed. This steady mechanical process is much like the work of journalists themselves. Okay, wait a second. A steady mechanical process, gradually and rhythmically building tension until reaching a big climax? Do we love documents movies because subconsciously we recognize that they are analogous to sex? I mean, okay, probably not. That's probably taking it too far, but you know, it's an idea. We can put a pin in that for later. What I've been describing is the most traditional form of the documents movie. True stories full of montages of dry but satisfying investigative work, ending with text on the screen telling us what happened after, what was the impact of the work they did. But there are some variations, subcategories that are forms of document movies that are worth noting. First up is the Grishams. Obviously, stories about lawyers have always been immensely popular. TV has been full of them since the very beginning, from Perry Mason up through Law and Order and probably like 20 more that are on TV right now. There are countless classic movies like Anatomy of a Murder. And then in the 90s, America fell in love with a writer named John Grisham, who wrote thrillers about lawyers, many of which would be adapted into hit movies. The Firm and The Pelican Brief are the best examples of this. They're not courtroom movies, and they're definitely not true stories, but they have many of the core elements of documents movies. They've got a few regular people up against a giant, powerful, existential enemy like the US government, or oil companies, or the mob. The climax always involves documents, usually locating the right documents that prove their case and defeat the bad guys. But these movies crank it all up, adding chase scenes and assassins, In Dark Waters, a traditional documents movie, there's a scene where Mark Ruffalo gets in his car in a parking garage and is afraid that there might be a car bomb. There isn't. It's not that kind of movie. But in the Pelican Brief, a Grisham, there is a car bomb. Actually, multiple car bombs. And even with all that action, some of the most enjoyable parts of these movies are just like watching Tom Cruise and Holly Hunter covertly move boxes of documents in the Cayman Islands and Xerox a ton of invoices. Also, to clarify the rules that I am making up right now, a movie does not need to be based on a book by John Grisham to qualify as a Grisham, but it does help. Which brings us to our next variation, the serial killer documents movie. So obviously we've got Zodiac, a masterpiece of a documents movie about a real-life serial killer, our Boston Strangler, which is basically a Zodiac knockoff that is still pretty solid. But there are so many purely fictional serial killer thrillers that are, of course, more conventionally Hollywood. As in these movies, they actually find the killer in the end. But they still involve extensive scenes of research, like in Seven, when Somerset goes to the library to do research in old books to find the influences for the killings. Or The Bone Collector, when Angelina Jolie makes a breakthrough in the case by going to a used bookstore and finding an old true crime book that reveals the pattern in the killings. And of course, in The Silence of the Lambs, you'd better believe there's a scene where Clarice Starling goes to the library to read some microfiche. Which of course leads us into the library horror movie. One of my absolute favorite horror movie tropes is when the protagonist goes to the library to do research on the history of the house or the town or the person who seems weird and creepy. And the best is when they look through microfiche or microfilm and read old newspaper articles. It gives whatever the evil threat is a sense of history that makes it feel more powerful. It's telling us this has been going on for a long time, long before our main characters showed up, and the information has been out there, but no one has done anything with it. Such as in The Ring, which has multiple scenes of looking up old newspapers in archives rooms, or researching in books at the library, or reading documents of old medical records. It's awesome. Or The Changeling, one of the all-time great library horror movies, which features multiple scenes of George C. Scott learning about the dark history of the family that used to live in his house by looking at old newspapers on microfilm or reading through old atlases in the city records. I'm not a huge fan of the movie The Amityville Horror, doesn't really do it for me, but when Margot Kidder goes to the library to read old articles on microfilm, yeah baby, that is the good shit. These moments of discovery have a similar hit of dopamine as when the reporters in Spotlight or All the President's Men finally make a huge breakthrough in their case by finding a key piece of evidence, except here, it's spooky. And look, almost anything can be a documents movie. Some of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons are when the show turns into an homage to documents movies, with Bart and Lisa investigating something. And in one episode, it even does an homage to the iconic shot from All the President's Men. And I think this is what modern cinema needs more of. Maybe this is what can save movie theaters and the film industry. Not more 4-quadrant IP, not chicken jockeys, a thing that I definitely understand. No. It's documents. All right, Chief, take a look at this. I think this year's Pulitzer has got my name on it.
All right, this is good work. But it's not ready to post.
What are you talking about? This is a perfect summation of documents movies and their appeal. Dave, people need to see this.
It's not ready. You post it like this, the algorithm's gonna crush you.
Wait, like they're gonna send an assassin after me? To shut me up for good?
What? No. The video's gonna flop. The fuck? What this video needs is a real galaxy brain take. Like how documents movies are just a commentary on the Gulf War.
Wait, for real?
No, it's an example I made up. Go do your fucking job!
Fine, but if the Globe beats us to this story, then I quit.
Patrick, someone claiming to be your girlfriend called and said the restaurant is gonna cancel your dinner reservation if you're not there in 10 minutes.
Nobbles, haven't you been paying attention? No personal life stuff, okay? Get out of here. Jesus.
Did you get your book returned?
Yep, no late fees here. Did I miss anything?
I don't think he went home last night.
Wait. I've got an idea. So if we look at the core canon of Documents movies, okay, as in the ones based on true stories, that list includes Zodiac and Aaron Brockovich. So now, let's look at the filmographies of the directors of those movies and see if we can find any patterns. Like David Fincher, we've got Seven, Documents, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, so many Documents. And okay, what about Steven Soderbergh? The Informant, Documents, Contagion, Documents. But wait, this whole time I've been so focused on Documents, these big, chonky stacks of paper, but maybe that's just a surface level detail, okay? Maybe this goes deeper than that, more abstract, more universal, like let me look at the rest of their movies. Putting Documents aside, what patterns do we have here? It's not just about documents. It's about process.
Exactly, the process of looking at documents, right? I'm lost.
Like, look at this. So many of Fincher's movies are about the process of working on a case and solving a mystery. There's obviously Seven and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but Gone Girl is about two processes: creating a fake mystery and solving a mystery. Mank is about the writing process. The Killer is an entire movie of a guy explaining the process for how he does his job. Mindhunter was a whole show that was basically a documents movie. And Soderbergh, he keeps returning to heist movies, which he realized in a 2017 interview are big metaphors for the filmmaking process, all about following and detailing every step of the process for putting the heist together. He has to understand everyone's job, how the security systems work, and how each piece fits together. So many of his movies follow the process of someone who is good at their job. The Ocean's movies, Black Bag, High Flying Bird, The Knick, Che. Like, Soderbergh was supposed to be the original director of Moneyball until he left the project because of creative differences, and that is one of the ultimate movies detailing the process of someone doing their job. They knew. These two guys knew the whole time. It was always just about process, and they never said anything.
I don't think they knew. I mean, we've been over every interview they've done, and they don't mention it.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought, until I cracked the code. Look at this quote.
I don't think we can legally publish that.
Shh, I'm on a roll, let me cook. Okay, so what I'm realizing here, what we're really talking about, what documents movies are just a great example of, is competence porn. A term that you're probably familiar with. It was coined by writer John Rogers back in 2009, and he used it to describe the satisfaction and comfort that we feel watching movies or TV shows featuring skilled people doing their jobs well. And the more you think about it, the more it becomes clear that this encompasses so much of popular fiction going back to the 1800s. Detective fiction, from Sherlock Holmes to Columbo to Poker Face, is built on watching a very smart person solve a mystery. TV's endless history of procedurals, whether about cops or lawyers, all about watching people do their jobs well. Like right now, in 2025, everyone is obsessed with The Pit, the throwback medical drama where we all feel comforted watching Dr. Robbie be a good doctor and handle all the pressure of an emergency room like a pro. And when it comes to documents movies, I think the core appeal is this combination of competence porn and the steady, comforting rhythms of investigations and repetitive work in pursuit of accomplishing a larger goal. Many of the best parts of these movies are scenes of people doing their jobs really well that play out in real time, sometimes in one unbroken shot. While the overhead library shot in All the President's Men is the most famous, my favorite one is this. A single 6-minute long shot pushing in on Redford as Bob Woodward making a bunch of phone calls to chase down a lead. So much of these movies are about compressing time, fitting months or years into montages because of how drawn out these investigations are. And here, in the span of 6 minutes, we see Woodward make a major breakthrough in the story through sheer good journalism. And as the camera keeps steadily pushing in, the background activity visible with the split diopter leaves the frame as we just focus on him. The camera refuses to cut, and we naturally hold our breath. It's the perfect example of how thrilling the most mundane things in these movies can be. Spotlight takes a lot of cues from this, featuring multiple phone calls that play out in single shots. And beyond documents movies, one of the most exciting scenes in Moneyball is just this 6-minute scene where Brad Pitt sits at a desk and makes a lot of phone calls. It's just rapid-fire negotiations to sell and acquire players, and he pulls it off. It's just perfect competence porn, and every time I watch it, I can't help but go... But look, I want to take this further than just TV procedurals and movies about lawyers doing paperwork. I think a major part of these movies just appeals to the way that we're wired. Look at YouTube and the immense popularity of videos where people assemble jigsaw puzzles or build Lego sets, or even Let's Play videos of people completing video games. There's an ASMR-like reaction to watching people complete projects, the steady, almost hypnotic forward momentum. I have already invoked David Fincher throughout this video, one of the kings of the process movie, and it's common to hear people say that they find his movies comforting. I mean, I've said that before in tweets that I tried to find and then I remembered that I deleted all my old tweets. But despite the grisly subject matter of so many of his films, they are weirdly soothing. I've heard so many people say that Gone Girl and Zodiac and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo are their comfort movies. A lot of it comes from the ultra-precise, smooth camera movements and rhythmic editing, but those are usually a perfect reflection of the subjects, people working quickly and precisely. The movies are pure, steady momentum. The truth is, we love seeing filmmakers who are really good at their jobs, making movies about people who are really good at their jobs. So as I'm saying all this, I'm starting to realize that maybe the real lesson of this episode is just that I love dad movies, which I guess shouldn't be too shocking because I do own a bunch of Kevin Costner films. But like, all of this that I've been talking about, this is basically what dad movies are. Movies about men who don't talk about their personal lives who are really good at their jobs. You know, like Ford versus Ferrari and every Michael Mann movie, and, like The Great Escape. That's like the ultimate competence porn process movie ever made, but also it's a World War II movie with Steve McQueen, so that's gotta be the #1 dad movie in cinema history. Although actually that could be debatable, so like, maybe I need to like make a scorecard and like grade all of these, and then I can create like a ranked list. Like
Patrick, save it for another video.
Yep, okay, you're right, we can save that for some other time. So look, the point here is that I love dad movies. And maybe that's weird because I'm not a dad, I do not have children, I've never even been married, and sorry, I'm breaking the rules, I'm talking too much about my personal life here. Look, maybe the truth is I am just at an age where all I really want from movies is men doing their jobs well. And want to be clear here, I also love women doing their jobs well. That Erin Brockovich, she's great. Okay, look, I have clearly spent way too long staring at movies and spreadsheets and, you guessed it, documents, and I've got a deadline to hit. So, it is finally time to hit publish. And just like Russell Crowe in State of Play, I'm gonna do it without even proofreading. Done. Documents. Competence. Dads. Oh, God, I'm a mess. I gotta clean myself up. After a late night research session, I always like to clean up my face with the Henson razor. I love that it leaves my skin smooth without any irritation. And that's not just my experience. See, Henson used a medical imaging startup to quantify that the Henson razor delivers significantly less razor burn than the leading drugstore brands. What I like about Henson is that they pay attention to the details to get everything just right. This blade only extends past the shave place less than the thickness of a human hair. I use Henson because it's a straightforward company. There aren't any gimmicks like moisturizing strips or subscriptions that lock you into buying more than you want. It is simply a classic single blade razor made in an aerospace machine shop that also made parts for the International Space Station, which I personally think is pretty cool. And bonus, it is completely plastic free, including the packaging. So the only thing you get rid of is the blade itself, and that is recyclable. So look, I look at my analytics and I know that 90% of this channel's audience identifies as male. So for all you men out there, if you were looking for a healthier way to shave, I recommend going to hensonshaving.com/Patrick H. Willems, then use the promo code Patrick H. Willems, and you will get 100 free blades. Unless you're a person who for some reason shaves 5 times a day, that will probably last you a really long time. Again, that is hensonshaving.com/Patrick H. Willems, code Patrick H. Willems to get 100 free blades with your Henson razor. So then you can get your face all clean and smooth and no one will know that you were actually up all night reading documents.